You're watching Prodos Games TV. Hello everybody. We're going to get back into the Warzone Resurrection War College, and this episode we're going to take a look at all the best ways that you and your opponent, or opponents if you're playing a multiplayer game, are going to be trying to murder each other. In Warzone Resurrection there are basically three ways that you're going to put your enemies down. First is going to be shooting, and this is common to pretty much every fantasy or sci-fi skirmish or large-scale game. You're going to have close combat, which, again, also everybody's going to be familiar with the concept of close combat, close-in fighting. And then in Warzone Resurrection, you're going to have psychic fight, which is psychic abilities or magic-like abilities. But in Warzone Resurrection, there is no psychic phase, shooting phase, close combat phase. Everything you do, and whether it's shooting, close combat, psychic abilities, and things like that, it's all going to be based off of actions you use during an individual model's activation. So what we're going to do today, since we've already talked about actions in a previous episode of War College, is we're going to look at and explain what a stat line looks like and what the numbers and things that you see in there mean for a shooting weapon, a close combat weapon, and a psychic fight ability. The first stat that we care about on all three of these is going to be R for range. On a shooting weapon, this is going to be its maximum range you can shoot out to. Occasionally you'll see two numbers here, and I'll explain what those are in a minute. For close combat weapons, you're going to have generally a much smaller number, and it could even be an acronym that's B2B, and we'll get into that in a second. But this is the maximum range or distance that your fighter can be away from its target. And then psychic fight range is either going to be a range of numbers or something else. It could be a notation, and we'll get into those when we look at range itself in more detail. But basically for all of them, how far away you can be from who you're trying to put down. Next up, we're going to have ST for strength. This is going to be how hard you hit somebody when you hit them. It is also going to modify their armor test where they're trying to not get dead. So every weapon or every ability that has an ST rating, when you hit an opponent with it, it's either going to make their armor test easier or harder for them to successfully make. Now you want to make it harder for them to take so you make them dead. So in the case here of the three weapons or abilities we're looking at, the assault rifle has a strength of 12, which is going to give your opponent a -2 to their armor test when you hit them. The heavy chain ripper has a strength rating of +4. This is added to your stat line's strength for the guy or gal that's using it. So if you had a strength 10 and you're using a heavy chain ripper, it boosts your strength up to 14. And then you can see on the psychic fight that we're looking at here, it has a strength 18. So all of those, basically you take the strength -10 is what the negative modifier is to their armor test. But if you're hitting somebody with something that has a strength less than 10, let's say a 7, 8, or 9, like you can see in the table here, that actually gives them a benefit because it's easier to shrug off a lighter hit. The next thing we have to look at is ROF and ROA. ROF stands for rate of fire, and you're going to mainly see that in projectile type weapon stats, and ROA is rate of attack for hand-to-hand type things. They're basically interchangeable. It's how many dice you get to roll when you're using this weapon or ability for an attack. And then you have AVV. And this is going to be the save modifier to a vehicle location when you hit it with this weapon. When you're shooting at a vehicle, your strength doesn't matter. So when you're shooting at a vehicle, that table we saw a second ago that said a strength of 12 is a -2 to the armor save, that only applies to guys, not vehicles. AVV is what applies to vehicles. And obviously the higher better because it's more chance to punch through it. So the chain ripper is going to do a pretty good job of cutting through vehicles, while the assault rifle is going to be much less likely to do so since it has an AVV of 0. And against vehicles, if they're being hit with something that has an AVV of 0, they get 2 chances to make a successful save against that hit. So AVV of 0 is really not the way you want to go if you have to shoot at a vehicle. And then here in the type column, you're going to see words and letters and parentheses and stuff like that that is going to give you more information about this specific weapon or ability. We'll get into all those in just a second. Now, one thing we're not going to get into are all of the, probably hundreds by now, of different individual passive and active abilities that different weapons have. They're pretty much unique to each other. A lot of them might have some crossover stuff like cannot increase rate of fire and stuff like that. but you're going to look that up in your weapon entries for your particular faction when you're building your force for Warzone Resurrection. Other than just a straight number, which you've already seen in the entries we looked at earlier, these are the rest of the notations you could see in the range section. And we'll go over each one of these real quick. B to B means your model has to be in base-to-base contact with the enemy for you to try to affect it with this particular weapon or ability. If you have a number and then a slash and SE, the number is the range. SE means you're going to use the small explosive template. Same thing with the number slash LE, except you're going to use the large explosive template. Always a good way to go. Capital ST is for the 7-inch shotgun template. SFT is for the 3.5-inch small teardrop flamer template. FT, large 7-inch flamer template. SQD CMM means this is going to impact the squad commander, generally your squad commander. Squad means it's going to impact the entire squad. ST that is not the shotgun, all capital ST, means that you're going to use your strength when you're using this. So this is for chucking grenades and stuff like that. And then if you have two numbers, like an X-Y, or it could be 8-40, something like that, this is going to be a minimum to maximum range. You won't be able to fire it within the minimum range, but you can fire it out to the maximum range. Things like mortars and stuff like that. And now on to the type notations. The P in parentheses is going to be for pistol, and what you really care about with pistols is that they can be used in close combat, but they lose any special active or passive rules or abilities they might have. So better to shoot people with, but you're not without a weapon if somebody charges you into a fight. Auto weapon can't be used in close combat. Special weapons also can't be used in close combat. If you're carrying a heavy weapon, you will never get an engage bonus when you initiate close combat, and your rate of attack is always going to equal 1. So if you're carrying a heavy weapon, heavy machine gun, big rail cannons, something like that, you don't want to mess around in hand-to-hand. G for grenades, they're going to use the model strength for range, and if they deviate, that could be bad, and if you roll really bad, it could blow up in your hand. So be careful, throw the grenade, not the pin. A rail gun, this is something that Cybertronic, Michael, a good friend of mine that plays them a lot, he likes a lot. They are very much like the rail guns that you saw in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Eraser, where they just shoot down a straight line through whatever they're going to get through until they run out of energy. So very cool guns if you got guys or enemies that are lined up in a nice, neat line, that's what I'm trying to say, that you can shoot through potentially a bunch of them. Psychic is an indicator of a psychic attack. And then you're going to have plasma, which just sucks to get hit with because it could reduce your armor tests and possibly cause you to make rerolls on successful ones. Piercing could also reduce armor tests, and blast could also reduce armor tests. And what I mean with that is everybody's armor that they're wearing is either going to say no negative test modifiers, which just means the only modifier you're going to suffer from is from the strength of the weapon that's hitting you. But if you have something that has armor blast -2 and you get hit with an explosive shell, you're going to take the negative modifier off the strength of the shell that hits you and another -2 because your armor is more susceptible to blast. So those will be in the model entries or the unit entries for your guys, so you know if they're getting hit with whatever, piercing, plasma blast, whatever, that if they're going to take an additional negative, you're going to know about it from that. So if you're a veteran Warzone Resurrection player, a lot of this you pretty much already knew, probably all of it. But if you're new to the game, this is stuff that is important for you to know, and not every video is for all of us veterans out there. Good to get new blood into the game and help them know some things. So thanks for watching, and before we take off for this episode, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a YouTube channel that you definitely want to check out if you're a Warzone Resurrection player, fan, whatever. It is Doom Trooper Radio on YouTube, and I've played with these guys before out at the Las Vegas Open. The mainstays of the channel are going to be Michael Sanders, who won the Las Vegas Open, Andrew Merkel, I think I pronounced your last name right, Andrew, sorry if I didn't, Andrew was also out at the Las Vegas Open with us, and he is affectionately known on Doom Trooper Radio as Doom Trooper Babyface, so look for him there. And also Carl Smith. Those three guys really put on a nice podcast, has a lot of information about Warzone Resurrection, a little bit of inside jokes here and there and stuff. Can be a little long at times, but I like it a lot. I'll put it on while I'm painting and listen to the guys as they're talking about one of what is my favorite games. So check out Doom Trooper Radio on YouTube. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you all next time.